Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria's political battlefield has just shifted again, and tonight on Viewpoint, we are witnessing what may become the single biggest political realignment since the birth of the Fourth Republic. Peter Obi has moved, Rabiu Kwankwaso has moved, 17 lawmakers have moved, and now Nigerian Democratic Congress, the NDC, has made its boldest move yet. The party has officially zoned the 2027 presidential ticket to southern Nigeria for one single 4-year term. This is not ordinary politics, this is strategy, this is calculation. This is coalition building at its highest level. And tonight, we ask the big question: is this the masterstroke that will reshape the 2027 presidential election, or is it another opposition alliance destined to collapse under the weight of ego, ambition, and Nigeria's brutal political realities? Welcome, this is Viewpoint, and I'm your host, Odiawa AI, and tonight we go deep. Join us shortly. You're welcome back. Abuja has become the center of political gravity, not because of government policy, not because of economic reform, but because opposition politicians are finally beginning to understand one painful truth: fragmentation is political suicide. For years, Nigeria's opposition parties have suffered from one major disease, which is actually division. Too many candidates, too many egos, too many platforms, too many structures. And the APC has benefited massively from that division. But now something appears to be different, which is actually happening. The NDC convention in Abuja may go down in history as the moment opposition politics stopped being emotional and started becoming mathematical. Because politics, especially Nigerian politics, is arithmetic, cold arithmetic, brutal arithmetic. If the opposition remains divided, APC wins, and that is simple. And what we are seeing now is an attempt to solve the equation. Peter Obi's movement into the ADC is perhaps the most important signal here, because Obi's political journey since 2023 has been one long search for a stable political vehicle. First, Labour Party, then the African Democratic Congress, now the National Democratic Congress. And according to Obi himself, he left because of what he described as a worsening political climate, internal crisis, external interference, hostility within party structures, pressure, and intimidation. And what does that tell us here? It tells us something many Nigerians already suspected. Opposition politics in Nigeria is not merely about elections anymore, it's about survival. Because once a political movement begins gaining momentum in Nigeria, internal warfare suddenly appears, court cases suddenly appear, factional chairmen suddenly appear, and parallel executives also suddenly appear, and before long, the party collapses from inside. That has become Nigeria's political pattern, and Obi clearly believes the ADC was heading in similar direction. So instead of remaining trapped in another endless internal crisis or cycle of political crisis, he moves fast, strategically, decisively, and not alone. The Kwankwaso's entry here. Now let's talk about that. The man who many analysts believe may be the real game changer here, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, because whether people like him or not, Kwankwaso controls something every serious politician respects: a loyal voting base, especially in Kano. And Kano is not just any state, Kano is a political empire. One of Nigeria's biggest voting blocs, one of the few states capable of changing national electoral calculations just overnight. And this is why Kwankwaso actually matters. In 2023, he proved something quite extraordinary. He could stand almost alone politically and still dominate Kano. That is not normal political strength. That is movement politics. And now the movement has entered the NDC. Now think carefully about what this means. Peter Obi brings in the urban youth-centric energy, and Kwankwaso brings in the northern grassroots machinery. Siraki Dixon, on the other part, brings in establishment of political networking. Defecting lawmakers bring in institutional legitimacy, and suddenly the NDC is no longer looking like a fringe coalition. It is beginning to look like a national opposition platform. And APC strategists know this actually. Trust me, they are watching carefully from behind the scenes. Now let's discuss something many people are underestimating: the lawmakers. those 17 lawmakers who have actually defected to the NDC. Because this is not just some symbolic politics, this is structural politics. When lawmakers move, it means conversations have been happening behind closed doors. Powerful conversations, political negotiations, elite calculations. And here's the important thing. Politicians do not defect randomly, especially not lawmakers. Lawmakers follow survival, lawmakers follow momentum, and they also follow possibilities. And if 17 lawmakers are already moving this quite early, then it means some people inside the political establishment believe the NDC may become a serious force before 2027 because politics is all about perception. Once politicians begin delivering a coalition win, elections or defections increase rapidly. And that may be exactly what we are witnessing now, the beginning of momentum politics. Now, this is the biggest decision coming in, zoning to the south. Let's look at this because it's the most explosive development of all, the zoning decision. The NDC has officially zoned the 2027 presidential ticket to southern Nigeria. And not only that, the party says the southern candidates will serve only 1 4-year term. Then power returns to the north in 2031. Now pause for a moment because this decision is politically brilliant and conversational at the same time. Victor Obi said something very important. He called it a smart political calculation, and honestly, he may be right because Nigeria operates on a written or an unwritten political understanding. Power rotation, north, north, and then again to the south. Whether people admit it publicly or not, that arrangement has become psychologically important to national stability. And the NDC appears to understand this reality perfectly. Looking at the numbers, Muhammadu Buhari from the north, 8 years. Bola Tinubu from the south, currently serving. If Tinubu completes 1-year term and loses in 2027, some northern political interests may feel dissatisfied or cheated if another southerner immediately seeks 8 more years. The NDC understands this tension, so what do? They created a compromise formula. A southern candidate for 4 years only, then back to the north. This is political engineering looking at it, and it is designed to reduce northern resistance to a southern opposition candidate. That is the key calculation here. Now, is Peter Obi now the front runner? Looking at that obvious question everybody is thinking. Is Peter Obi now the presumptive NDC presidential candidate? Officially, no. But politically, possibly yes. Because several signs point towards that direction. First, Victor Obi openly referenced Obi's previous statements about serving only 1 term. Secondly, the zoning arrangement fits Obi perfectly. Thirdly, Obi already has a nationwide name recognition. And fourthly, among opposition figures, Obi arguably possesses the strongest youth-driven political enthusiasm. But there are little major obstacles here. And this is where things get complicated because excitement does not automatically equal victory. Politics is more ruthless than social media, much more ruthless. Now, what do we look at now coming at the APC's advantage? Let us not forget something important. The APC remains the ruling party. And incumbency in Nigeria is enormously powerful. State resources at their disposal, institutional influence, governorship structures, federal appointments, political patronage, security influence, and media leverage. These are the advantages that give APC a leverage. And opposition coalitions in Nigeria historically struggle with one major problem: unity before election and collapse after ticket allocation. That is the danger facing the NDC, because today everybody may smile together, but what happens after the primaries? What happens if Obi emerges the flag bearer of the NDC? What happens if another southern candidate emerges as the flag bearer of the NDC? What happens if another stakeholder, not to be precise, begins feeling sidelined or marginalized? Can this coalition actually survive the pressure? That's the billion naira question here we're going to ask ourselves. Kwankwaso's national message hearing. His speech at the convention was deeply strategic. Fine. He spoke repeatedly about unity, about fairness, about national healing. Why? Because the NDC understands something critical. Nigeria is emotionally fractured, ethnically tense, economically angry, and regionally suspicious. And every major political coalition now must sell not just policies but emotional reassurance. That is why Kwankwaso emphasized fairness. That is why the zoning arrangement matters. That is why the 4-year promise matters. The NDC is trying to present itself as a balancing platform, a healing platform, a stabilizing platform. Now, whether Nigerians believe that message is another kettle of fish or matter entirely. Now, let's talk about what may ultimately determine the 2027 elections. The economy, because Nigerians can endure political drama, but economic suffering, that changes the game plan for the elections. Kwankwaso attacked the current administration over and over again, raising concerns over rising hardship, insecurity, collapsing education, displacement, and vanishing investments, and harsh economic policies without safety nets. These are not small accusations. These are pocketbook issues, real-life issues, kitchen table issues, and historically, economic pain creates political openings always. The question is, can the NDC successfully convert public frustration into organized electoral power? That's the real challenge, because anger alone does not win elections. Structures win elections. Coordinations win elections. Protection of votes wins elections. Coming to the North's calculation, here another critical angle many people are deliberately ignoring. Northern political elites may actually find this arrangement attractive. Why? Because the NDC has essentially offered the North a guaranteed return in 2031. Think about the psychological aspect of the whole thing. Instead of asking Northern politicians to wait potentially 8 years after Tinubu, the NDC says, no, just 4 years. That changes negotiation dynamics dramatically, and this may explain why Kwankwaso publicly embraced the arrangement so quickly. Because politically, it gives Northern stakeholders something valuable, predictability, and politics often revolves around predictable access to power. Now we arrive at the hardest question of all. Can the coalition actually defeat President Bola Tinubu and the APC machinery? That depends on several factors. Number one, can the opposition remain united? Secondly, can they avoid destructive internal primaries? Number three, can they expand beyond social media enthusiasm? Number four, can they secure governors? Because governors matter enormously in Nigerian elections. And number five, can they protect their votes nationally? Remember, winning public excitement is one thing, and winning Nigerian elections is another thing totally. There is also something symbolic happening here. Notice where all this is actually unfolding. Abuja, the epicenter of power, the capital, the political heartbeat of Nigeria. And symbolism matters in politics. The NDC convention was designed to send a message. We are no longer outsiders. We are no longer fragmented. We are ready. That is the image they are actually trying to project. A government still in waiting. Whether Nigerians buy that image, time will only tell. Now, ultimately, the entire political experiment comes down to one thing, which is trust. Can Obi trust the structure? Can Kwankwaso trust the whole arrangement? Can Southern politicians trust the one-term promise? Can Northern politicians also trust the 2031 agreement? Can Nigerians trust politicians who have moved across multiple political parties? They are massive questions. These are massive questions, and trust is fragile in Nigerian politics. Very, very fragile. On a final analysis, one thing is now undeniable. The 2027 race has changed dramatically. Before now, the opposition looked scattered, confused, and disconnected. Now they are at least an attempt at consolidation, trying to consolidate. A serious attempt, and for the first time in a long while. The APC may actually face a coordinated national challenge, not just outline outrage, not just isolated candidates, but a broad coalition trying to merge northern influence with southern momentum. Whether it succeeds, it depends on discipline, compromise, strategy, and survival. Tonight, Abuja has sent a message to Nigeria, a message that alliances are shifting, power is recalculating, and the road to 2027 has officially begun. But remember this, political conventions do not win elections. Speeches do not win elections either, neither do headlines win elections. Structures win elections, strategy wins elections, and ultimately, Nigerian people decide whether a coalition becomes history or becomes government. The NDC has made its move. Now the nation watches. Will this become the coalition that finally reshapes Nigeria's political future, or another opposition alliance consumed by ambition, ego before the election day arrives? I've been your host, Odiawa AI, and this has been Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. You'll do well to follow us across our social media platforms. Thanks for watching.